Hey guys, it's the Metal Blade 5. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I made a video about my unpopular video game opinions. And it's a pretty shit video. Least of all the fact being that it's super outdated now. I have a lot more unpopular opinions. I'm essentially the god of unpopular opinions. But I was adamant about making another one because I've already made tons of continuation videos, so I thought it would be repetitive. However, I couldn't think of anything else to do right now, and honestly there were several unpopular opinions I developed somewhat recently that I wanted to express, and then I just added in a couple of others that I also noticed. So there aren't as many topics in this video compared to the previous one, and most of them boil down to, I like this character design that everybody hates, or I like this game that everybody hates. Again, I have to reiterate this, as I still see a lot of people who don't get this. Not anybody in the comments at the previous Unpopular Opinions video, just some toxic groups that think their opinions are fact. These are just purely subjective thoughts on subjective matters at the end of the day. Plus, if you do disagree with me, then that means you're in the popular crowd, so you still win. All I have to really worry about is that toxic group of YouTubers who ridicule people over having a difference in opinion. I tried to organize these topics in a way that would fit well, so all of the character design opinions come first. So in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they decided to break the Zelda character tradition by making each of them different incarnations of the character. The one that I see the most noted as being related to a popular opinion is Ganondorf going back to his Ocarina of Time version. I gathered from fan reactions that the Ocarina of Time version of Ganondorf appears to be the most popular, but honestly, from a design standpoint, not only do I prefer the Twilight Princess design for Ganondorf, it's actually my favorite Ganondorf design. Now, I have nothing against the Ocarina of Time design, and I'm not mad that they went back to that version, as it makes sense for them to use the most popular version when not giving a shit about using them all from the same game. It's just that there's one little thing about the Ocarina of Time design that I'm not a fan of. Not that I dislike the design overall or anything. I know this sounds really nitpicky, but it's his nose. Ganondorf's nose looks so pointy, but in a very cartoony way, so he just looks really goofy to me. Additionally, I think Twilight Princess Ganondorf looks physically tougher, as he appears bulkier, what with wearing that black armor. Plus, they gave him a more regal look, like with his hairstyle, which gives off the impression that Ganondorf already sees himself as a king, which I think fits his character a lot. My design preferences also somewhat extend to Ganon, as Twilight Princess Ganon is also my favorite since I prefer him being more of a beast rather than a humanoid pig, as in the very early games with the more cartoon art style. It also looked pretty goofy, even though I am aware of Ganon's inspiration. In fact, the Twilight Princess designs for all the main characters are my favorites. Yes, even Zelda as a brunette. I just singled out Ganondorf for the reaction to the Smash Bros. Change. It's probably to do with the fact that I played Super Smash Bros. Brawl before any Zelda game, so the first time I saw the characters outside of the cel-shaded look from Wind Waker was their Twilight Princess designs. And even then, the first Zelda game I played was Twilight Princess, which further cemented me seeing the characters that way. It's familiarity. Kind of like how with most anime I've seen over the past year, the first opening theme is actually my favorite despite how much I like the later ones, which is an unpopular opinion of itself, for most likely a similar reason. Continuing on with the subject of villain designs, and also Smash Bros. Ultimate characters, Ridley. This is more related to people disliking the design rather than having a preference. I see a lot of people who really hate Ridley's design in Other M. I wouldn't say that Other M Ridley is my favorite design for him. I don't really have an outright favorite, but if I had to pick one, then I would say the Smash Bros. Ultimate design, as he looks terrifying. But I do really like the Other M design, unlike everybody else, who I never see give a reason as to why they don't like it, so I have nothing to go off. Meaning that this will be a pretty short section. The one criticism I have of Ridley's Other M design is that I do think he lacks the creepy factor seen in his other appearances, as he isn't anorexic in this instance. But I feel that they kind of make up for that by making him look a lot more threatening and ferocious. Ridley is more jacked in Other M, so it makes him look much stronger, and things like his sharper teeth, longer claws, and the more spear dagger look to the end of his tail makes him seem more like a crazy killing machine, which is precisely Ridley's character. What further adds to the look of Ridley's psychotic nature is his lack of pupils in the design as well. While I know other Metroid games have also done that, not all of them have. Plus, I prefer Ridley having bigger wings compared to his previous designs, where his wings are so small to the point that it looks absurd how he is able to fly with them. Although, pretty much everything else to do with Ridley and Other M I agree with the popular opinion of, like with the dumb Samus trauma scene. For the last design-related topic, this might take the cake for the most bizarre out of all the unpopular opinions. It's something that I've thought for the last 10 years, and I only just remembered it and felt it was worth bringing up here. One of the most subjective video game topics I've seen, and one that certain people take way too seriously, is Pokemon designs. Whether they may be considered cute, cool, creepy, or ugly, but there is one Pokemon that I have a bit of a weird opinion on in terms of its design. That is Sheldor. I don't talk as much about unevolved Pokemon since in most cases I prefer the final evolution, and it's what I usually see when viewing a Pokemon, as that's what it will ultimately become, but Sheldor is an exception to that, and it's purely because of an episode of the anime. I don't know why this episode has such a profound effect on my thoughts of Sheldor, considering it was a filler episode. There was an episode of the Diamond and Pearl anime where there was this girl who only liked and chose to use cute Pokemon. But Brock tries to teach her that there's more to Pokemon than just cuteness. And then it's revealed that the reason why she has this mentality is that she has a Sheldor, which she thinks is cute, but all of her friends mocked her for thinking that way and chose to only use Pokemon that are universally accepted as cute. Then Team Rocket shows up and, they blast off again. I think you can tell where I'm going with this. I do think that Sheldor is kinda cute. Not as cute as, say, Alolan Vulpix, or even normal Vulpix for that matter, but cute in its own way. I was 10 when that episode aired, and I thought, really? Sheldor's ugly? Granted, that's what some anime characters we never actually see think, but I don't see anybody else share a similar view, so I still count it as unpopular. The reason why I find Sheldor cute is because of those beady eyes, and it's always sticking out its tongue. For once, a tongue is considered something to do with being cute. I think it's like a derpy kind of cute, and the goofy style that I like, as with Ganondorf finding his nose goofy to be bothersome came as a result of Ocarina of Time having a more realistic art style, whilst Pokemon has always looked anime. Sheldor's also pretty small and simplistic, which is a characteristic I often see with other Pokemon I find cute. Lastly, enough said. So, oh boy. I think out of all the opinions in this video, this one will receive the most backlash. It's about a game that everybody loves, and has received tons of praise. And while I don't hate this game, my experience with it has caused me to develop a bit of a different view on it. I have a love-hate relationship with Sonic Mania. I don't mean any disrespect for people who solely love this game, or for the developers, and this is purely based on my experience with the game, so of course it would differ for everyone else. For what I really like about Sonic Mania, I love the creativity placed in the game's aesthetics and level design. While the majority of the zones in this game are already existing ones from the classic Sonic games, I think they're designed in unique ways that make them feel different. In addition to that, I really like all the original touches made to the game, and as it's a Sonic game, the music is amazing. Studiopolis is phenomenal. But what kind of hampers my overall view on Sonic Mania is that I had a lot of frustrating moments when playing it. I know this sounds presumptuous, but these moments I'm referring to were not my fault. One of the most common things that annoys me in video games is when something is difficult, but whilst having nothing to do with the player's skill. The most common of all these situations was due to the game having some weird hit detection or physics at times. There were plenty of cases where I got stuck at ramps and loops due to Sonic suddenly losing momentum whenever I slightly held the control stick in the opposite direction due to said ramps and loops suddenly appearing and me not being fully prepared for them. But that was the least frustrating. All it did was force me to backtrack a bit to gain enough speed. But there were some obstacles in levels that had really weird physics. The biggest example being the first act of the final zone, which I despise by the way, where I got stuck at this one part for ages, as I had to use these weird balls to shoot Sonic upwards, but for the life of me, I couldn't get Sonic to go in the right direction the majority of times, despite doing it properly, forcing me to fall back down. Combined with the slow-paced nature of that level, and I timed out. I actually timed out in a Sonic game and had to redo the entire level. I wasted 9 very long minutes, not counting deaths, of my life. There was also things like questionable enemy placement, I'll say, as there were lots of moments where an enemy suddenly appeared during a fast speed section or hit me during moments where I couldn't possibly react in time, resulting in me getting hit. There were barely any levels where I finished with a decent ring count. And also, there were minor things like me having no idea how to fight the Sawblade boss and losing 2 lives to him before figuring it out by complete accident. And the Hydro City Eggman fight where I swear it's impossible to avoid getting hit after each time you hit him. But despite those things, I was still managing to get through. But getting back to hit detection, there were a number of times where the game counted me as getting crushed for some of the most minor things. And this really came into play when reaching the second act of the final zone, where there's this short section where you have to ride two small platforms that are right next to each other. However, the game counted me getting crushed for just slightly touching the platform on the left, even when it wouldn't actually crush if it was realistic. I lost 5 lives in a row because of this, no matter how much I tried to stay to the center of the platform, and got a game over. Meaning I had to start the zone all over again from the first act, which I hate. So I honestly rage quit it. I couldn't be bothered to do it again. Ultimately, it was a bunch of little things that just added up over time. I do want to give the game another chance with Plus, but I don't know if I could handle that final zone again. Continuing on from that topic, there was also the other Sonic game that came out last year, Forces. By contrast, Forces received a more mixed to negative reception, but I like it. This is going to cause even more hate, seeing as how I had gripes with Mania, but like Forces. But it's the truth. Now, do I like everything about Forces? Hell no! I'll say right off the bat that I didn't like Forces as much as, say, Colors, but I still enjoyed it overall. The main criticisms I hear of Sonic Forces is that the levels are too short and play themselves, in which I honestly have a hard time understanding this. Not that I'm saying those people are wrong, it just confuses me because I saw the length of the levels being along the same lines as those found in Colors and Generations, which everybody loves, with the exception of the bonus stages where I kind of expected them to be short. In fact, the overall length and number of levels, another point of criticism I've seen, felt around the same as Colors and Generations as well for me. As for the levels playing themselves, I will admit that there are some sections of a couple of levels that do feel very automated, with the only player input being to move Sonic left and right. However, this only happened a handful of times, and Colors, Generations, and pretty much every modern Sonic game has done the same thing, and I don't see anywhere near as much criticism on that aspect for them. Similarly to Mania, I really liked the creativity placed into the levels, aesthetics, and design, plus the music is awesome as it's a Sonic game. Unlike a lot of people, I liked the gameplay for the Avatar, original character, Do Not Steal, with the use of Wispons as weapons and the grappling hook, as I found it different, but still fun. Do I think they could have expanded upon it? Yes, but some strong foundations are there. And I bet you can guess what I did with my Avatar. I enjoyed Sonic's levels just as much as I did with Colors and even Lost World. Classic Sonic's levels I did feel weren't that great, but there are very few of them, so it only makes up a small portion of the game. There were several frustrating moments like with Mania, but they were also few and far between. But for what I didn't like about Forces, that was mainly the plot. I like the idea of Eggman taking over the world and Sonic acting as the Resistance, because it's kind of reminiscent of the classic games, but some of its execution fell flat. Everybody thinks that Sonic is dead after only getting hit a few times by Infinite. Then like 5 minutes later in game time, they learn that Sonic is still alive, so what was the point? I would have been interested in the idea of this game having 3 different storylines going on at the same time, one for each character, with it revolving around people thinking that Sonic is dead before they all join up. But they didn't do that. Classic Sonic felt very forced in, and they pointlessly retconned him to be from an alternate dimension rather than past Sonic, and Infinite was a very underwhelming villain. He's given barely any backstory, what we did get was lame, and when he's defeated, it's so anticlimactic, as he just flies away and I guess he dies. Forces was essentially a repeat of Lost World for me. A game that I heard sucked before playing it myself, and I ended up liking it despite having some gripes. For another somewhat recent game that I like despite the majority possessing a different view, I like Kirby Star Allies. While Star Allies isn't hated like Sonic Forces, most fans found the game disappointing upon its release. And while there is one major thing about this game that really bummed me out, I still ended up really liking it. My biggest issue with the game, and this is something I generally don't think of when forming my opinion on the game, is its length. Star Allies is a pretty short game compared to Adventure Wii, Triple Deluxe, and Planet Robobot. There are only 4 worlds, and while they progressively get longer, you'll find yourself reaching the final boss in a generally fast time. But the reason why this bothers me is because I love the levels and gameplay so much, to the point that I just wanted the experience to be a bit longer. I've seen criticism on Star Allies level design for being quite simplistic and easy, even for Kirby standards. I'm not going to use the Kirby games are supposed to be easy excuse, as people made me realize that just because something's intentional doesn't mean it's good. But in a similar vein to Sonic Forces, I didn't see the level design as being that drastically different compared to previous 2D Kirby games. I do see where people are coming from in this case, but I didn't think the difference was that big. I really like the friend mechanic of both concept and execution, as the AI is surprisingly pretty good, whereas in similar co-op style games I find the AI to be terrible. I found the combat levels in both their diversity and designs, and the bosses to be extremely fun, and I loved using the new and revamped copy abilities combined with their fusion counterparts. While merging copy abilities isn't as in-depth compared to 64, I still thought it was a blast. And while this is another thing I generally don't think about when forming an opinion on a game, the graphics are amazing. It looks so bright and colorful, plus levels like Planet Earthfall look absolutely amazing. This further enforces why I wish the game was a bit longer. But I still have Star Allies Go to play through, as I've been busy with trying to finish other games, and the upcoming Dream Friends to keep me occupied. In the first Unpopular Opinions video, I ended off with a Fire Emblem related topic. So I decided to do the same thing here, and as for this Unpopular Opinion, it has to do with a certain character. That character being everybody's favorite, seductive, big-boobied Malik Knight, Camilla. Having unpopular opinions on Fire Emblem characters isn't anything new to me, so let's go. Every time I brought up Camilla in the past, it has been solely to do with her massive tits. And yes, I'll say this right now, I do legitimately think she's hot. I have no idea how this came from the DNA of this wrinkly old testicle. Her seductive personality does wonders for my teenage hormones, and of course, those melons. They even acknowledge them in Warriors.
Sorry, darling. My eyes are up here.
But putting all that aside, as for once, I'm going to have a serious discussion about Camilla. A lot of people I see on the internet don't like Camilla. Not because of her looks, but because of her personality, as she's insane. I'll admit that she is psychotic, with her overprotective nature towards Corrin and her younger siblings. But that plays into why I actually like Camilla's character. No, it's not because I get turned on by crazy chicks. I may have admitted to finding some psychotic chicks hot, but their insanity is purely coincidental. What I mean is the reason why Camilla is psychotic is also the reason why I actually like her character. Turns out that Camilla's mother was one of Garen's mistresses, but she didn't care about Camilla at all, only using her as a method to continue getting close to Garen, since I guess he's like Nintendo's Hugh Hefner or something, and as such, Camilla was completely neglected by her mother, and the lack of any love or affection left a massive void in her heart. So then, when Corrin was raised into the Norian royal family, and after Leo and Elise were born, and treated in similar ways by their mothers, Camilla took up this overprotective and obsessively maternal role towards them as a means to fill this void and prevent them from going through the same experience as her. While Camilla is mentally unstable and overprotective, the reason why this is the case makes perfect sense to me, and as a result, I see her as a pretty sympathetic and honestly well-developed character. It's just not really implemented with the main events of the game, which is my only major criticism. You see, I don't view women as sexual objects, I care about them on a character level. However, there is one other unpopular opinion remaining, and it's also Fire Emblem related. I've had this on my mind for a long time, and it's honestly the main factor as to why I wanted to make this video, as I didn't see much of a better opportunity to cover it. So this will probably be the longest one of all. I like Fire Emblem Warriors. I really enjoyed Hyrule Warriors ever since I first played it, despite having never played a Musou game before then, and because of that, I thought of what other Nintendo series could get the same treatment, in which Fire Emblem solely came to mind as it's also about taking on large armies. So when that dream became a reality, I got extremely hyped. Then when the game came out, there was tons of controversy, and it appears that most people disliked this game. But I really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I last played Hyrule Warriors, so I can't exactly compare the two, but right now, I like them equally. But while I do really like this game, I'll admit I have a few gripes with it. My biggest one being that the plot sucks. This game makes Fates' plot look like a masterpiece. Not only does it sound like a weird Fire Emblem fanfiction, but it's pretty generic and by the numbers. There's tons of cheesy moments like essentially using the power of friendship to win, and it's only in like the last quarter of the game where the real threat comes into play. Plus, Rowan and Liana are the most generic Fire Emblem protagonists I've seen, as their personalities aren't that interesting, they're given no depth, and they're essentially copies of Alphonse and Sharina. Yes, I know Koei Tecmo didn't know about Heroes when pitching the idea, but I still felt that Alphonse and Sharina were a little more interesting. In fact, some aspects of Heroes' plot, like the summoning, the contracts, and war between the two kingdoms, could have been used for Warriors' plot to improve it. And then add the typical dragon final boss. Then there's the roster. This has been the main point of criticism, as this game primarily focuses on Shadow Dragon, Awakening, and Fates. While I would have preferred more of a focus on the whole series, or at least include Ike's games due to his popularity, that isn't my issue with the roster. Other than the large imbalance of character representation for each game, my sole criticism with the roster is that they went with the most boring and predictable choices from each game, with the exception of Cordelia. Like, did we really need every sibling character from Fates? If I was making this game, I would have stuck with Xander and Ryoma as they're the most important, and then add Takumi and Camilla for moveset potential and variety. Plus, while I was so happy that Lyn made it, it feels random as she's the only Blazing Blade character in the game, and the same goes for Celica, especially since Alm is absent. I was actually originally planning on making a roster video for this game, similar to what I did with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but I scrapped it as most of the characters I would have included were leaked as DLC. Although I think that making Owain, Oboro, Niles, and Navarre DLC despite them appearing in the story is bullshit. But despite all of that, I still really like this game, as well I do have issues with the roster. I still feel that the majority of choices were good ones, and I did get my most wanted characters from each game and Fates version. Musou games are very love or hate, but like with Hyrule Warriors, I found the gameplay to be so much fun. I love how they implemented the strategy elements from the main series, so battles aren't just about destroying everything. There's times where you may want to have a character guard someone, or retreat back to base, or avoid going straight to the boss as you want to finish other objectives first, along with incorporating the weapon triangle, pairing up, and support conversations into it, which are equally important in gameplay. For each map, I had to plan out who I wanted to use based on the enemy composition and levels for a bit before starting. Like Hyrule Warriors, I had so much fun playing every character in this game, with one exception for both games. Whenever I need to get an S rank in history mode for a master seal, I just use Marth because he's an unstoppable force in my hands. Although, it did bother me that there were a number of clones, even for characters that have enough material for a unique moveset. And while our protagonists are bland, the already established characters still retain everything I liked about them from their games, as their personalities continue to shine through, as I kind of fanboyed over them interacting with each other, backed up by the surprisingly great voice acting for a Musou game. For the most part. I don't think there's anything else for me to say, as Musou games are pretty simple and usually you have more things to say about what you dislike than you like, but basically the gameplay and the fun times I had playing the game made up for the things that I'm not a fan of. The only thing that I want to see more from this game is honestly more DLC. Hyrule Warriors got a ton of DLC after the initial packs, and this way I feel they could improve the roster. Like, maybe we could get characters from Ike's games, maybe we could get more Blazing Blade and Echo's characters, and so on. That's all I really have to say about these sets of opinions. I'm not good at coming up with decent ending lines for videos, so I'll just hide in the bunker.